Welcome and thanks for joining us today. My guest is Jody Hauk, the Executive Director of U.S. DoD Business Sector for Veritas. Jody, welcome to the program.
Thanks, great to be here.
So big data, data governance, data management, there's so much to talk about. We know that the government is overwhelmed by data. We know that they're having trouble managing it, and many agencies are really just at that beginning stages of how to manage the data. So let's just start at the beginning. The challenge of storing all this data, how is that challenge being dealt with in the government?
So it's a great question, and in reality what we're learning is that it's being hoarded. Agencies find it much easier just to continue to buy more storage. There's a lot of myths. They believe storage is cheap. They believe all data has value. All data is equal value. And there's no such, and they're going to move this data into the cloud. So that's free storage. So why shouldn't I keep it? In reality, not all data is information. In fact, we've done an analysis with the Data Genomics Index, and we've discovered that somewhere between 40 and 60% of the data and content that is captured is actually rot, redundant, obsolete, and trivial. So we are spending $5 million per petabyte to store rot. And we believe there is a much better way to go about supporting our missions and driving out cost if we could implement an information governance strategy today and start around both rot and stale data, and then move forward with coming up with solutions to create dispensation projects so that we can actually remove data that has no value off our systems, whether it's after 10 years, 25 years, etc. So it's a culture change, it's a technology change. We can't do it by manually looking at every piece of data, but there is the capability to automatically crawl around, document what you have, and then take action.
I love the term rot. I think it's something that should be part of the lexicon of the federal community and really can drive that home. Why, when you did the research and 40 to 60% of all data is considered rot, and then the cost factor, talk a little bit about more of those two statistics, because I think it's fascinating about what you guys found.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We found a number of Microsoft and Outlook PST files, and those files were largely write once, read never. I work for an agency that used to keep all of our emails into perpetuity. That meant they had every email I sent to my buddy down the street about going to lunch. That had no mission relevance or value. 30 days after those files are sent, 90% have never been read or never opened up again. As far as the cost of a terabyte of data, that cost is actually calculated by the Gartner Group. And it's interesting because that comes out to 39 cents a gigabyte. If you're going to store your data in Amazon, you're going to spend 10 cents a gigabyte. If 10 cents a gigabyte gets rounded out to a petabyte of data, it's over $1 million. So if you're going to move your data into the cloud, you're still going to spend $1 million, and you're still going to be wasting that amount of money on rot. And we found that a lot of the file types are compressed data, a lot of the file types are imagery, and a lot of file types are dev environments that they're never taken down. You're done developing. You should remove them from the environment and regain that capability back.
Do you get a sense that the reason why so much of the data is just, as you said, hoarded versus pushed through and gotten rid of, is because people are so worried about, well, what if I need it? I mean, the paper world, we're all known for keeping files and files and files of paper, and maybe once a year you'd clean some out, but you'd always keep some. Is that it's the typical, we took a paper process and just moved it into the electronic world in many regards?
I think so. I mean, that's why we have file cabinets in our Microsoft Office tools. I think the reality is, though, that we cannot continue to acquire, create, and maintain data growth at 40% annually. In the Air Force, we've discovered that they are handling over 500 FOIA cases a month, and they are looking through data at 138 bases manually. It doesn't scale. They can't respond when they have timelines. They can't respond quickly. They basically are afraid that they have to keep everything based on rules and requirements that the Department of Justice is telling them, because now everything is electronic, therefore it's a record. How are you going to do mission if you're spending 70% of your time addressing these searches? And so we've got a people problem, we've got an attitude problem, and we have an ownership problem. And what we're finding right now is when you talk to the gentlemen and women who are doing data center consolidation, oh, I just provide the infrastructure. That's not my job. Do you have data stewards? No, we don't have any data stewards. So we really want to just help our customers start somewhere.
And the other piece of this, you said people management ownership. I think there's a fourth problem in cybersecurity, the insider threat problem. If you don't know what you have and you don't know who's looking at what you have, I think that's another issue of the people sometimes overlook because of the challenges, and even with the insider threats that we've seen recently, that doesn't seem to have spurred them to action.
Absolutely. So we have a three-step process that we're trying to talk with our partners and customers about. How do you get started? You gain visibility. And you gain visibility by using automated tools to let you find out what's in your environment. When we did the Data Genomics Index, which was 89% of the Fortune 500 companies that participated, we found that 41% of the data in an environment didn't change within the last 3 years. That means nobody's opened it, nobody's analyzed it, nobody's used it. We found that 12% of that data hadn't been touched in 7 years. That's redundant, obsolete, or trivial data right there. So the first step is gain visibility. What do you have? And as you do that, figure out what data actually has information and value and content. Then second, take action. Come up with a better business decision model to classify, retain, and then defensively delete that information that no longer has any relevant business value. And then finally, assume control. Somebody has to be responsible, somebody has to take ownership, and will mistakes be made? Sure. So if you're really worried about not being able to find that one piece of data that you need 25 years from now, archive it in a sensible environment where it's indexed so you can actually go find what you need when you need it.
I think the way you laid it out in the three-step process makes absolute sense. So let's just start with step one, which is the idea of gain visibility, automated tools. 12% never touched their data in 7 years is just a fascinating number. So when you talk about automated tools and gaining visibility, what kind of tools are we talking about? Is it asset management tools? Is it data management tools? What are we talking about? Yeah,
we have a product called Data Insight, and we use that product in a number of environments today. And in fact, Data Insight is part of what has been used to contribute to the datagenomics.org project. And it will let you go out and actually look at your entire data holdings. It'll tell you what you have, who's used it, who's the owner, is it orphaned, when was the last time it was accessed, and then you can actually get a visual display. You actually can have a dashboard that allows you to have intelligent decisions around what is in my holdings. Therefore, I can reduce risk, I can drive out cost, and I can start putting policies in place that make sense. And of course, it's really important to develop an information governance framework that's flexible, because laws change, regulations change, and who knows where technology is going to be in 3 to 5 years from now. We've seen such a huge change. But you have to begin that information governance journey somewhere. And our view is you start by knowing what's in your environment. There's also a cyber security play here, because if you visualize the information you have, you can see if Jody Hauk has access to human resource records. I probably don't need access to human resource records, and if I'm showing up in your view of your data environment, that might give you a clue that some access controls aren't properly set. Or I used to be HR, I left HR, I've gone into engineering, and nobody turned my access controls off. Imagine how that capability could be used to protect against insider threat.
And I think the key here is probably starting small. You can't boil the ocean, you can't eat the elephant in one bite. You pick your analogy here, but start small with a data set and apply the tools.
Absolutely. Pick a workflow, pick FISA, pick any of those workflows that you're having a challenge with. How can I take the manual activity out? Because we all know budgets are being cut. We all know we have fewer resources, but we're trying to get more done. So start with a vector and then make progress and then move to the next one. And if you have a framework that's flexible enough, you can easily accommodate those changes.
All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll get to number 2 on the list. You're listening to Breaking the Cycle of Data Hoarding, sponsored by Veritas on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.